You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Today I'm here with Todd Marks. Todd Marks runs Mindgrub, which is an agency, but he's also got a venture arm. So first thing I want to hear about is sort of the backstory of Mindgrub, but why you also decided to start sort of an incubator and venture arm.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So I started out as a high school teacher, believe it or not, in the 90s, and the internet happened, and the dot-com boom happened, and I just felt like I wanted to try my hand at technology. And my kayaking partner at the time showed me this product called Macromedia Flash. It was actually Future Splash at the time and later became Adobe. But I saw that, and as a high school teacher, I thought it'd be a really great platform for creating online e-learning. So I started our first company in about 2000, made it past September 11th by about 6 months, but didn't have the capital when the market went soft. Started another company later in about 2005, working on Windows Mobile. And didn't have a lot of success there. But I had started Mindgrub in 2002 after shutting down this first company. It was me as an independent consultant for the longest time, and kept trying to figure out how to get a second person on a contract, grow from 1 to 2 at least, but couldn't do it. Jumped around, worked for a company founded by Deloitte and others in New York for a number of years. But then essentially 2007, the iPhone was released. And then 2008, they released the SDK in January 2008. And I was working for Motorola in Chicago. It was a cold winter day. And I swear I've exaggerated over these years, but I'm reading the paper on my phone and a taxi cab splashes me with. Anyway, when they released the SDK, I walked right in. I'm like, I'm out of here. I quit. I want to go try my hand at making iPhone apps. And so they extended my contract by a little bit, another 6 months. But I was also teaching at University of Maryland at the time and hired some students who would report to my basement. And we started making some of the first iPhone apps. And I actually had a friend visit from Malaysia that said the reason there aren't many startups in Malaysia is because they don't have basements or garages. And so he was jealous to see my basement operations at the time. I had my first employees help me install a toilet and build some walls. But needless to say, made some of the first iPhone apps for Dell and Geico and Yamaha. And we were doing some web work at the time, but we were largely engineers. And I started to dabble in some visual design. I got my hands on Visio and started to do some of the first user experience design because I was much slower at the visual design. So I thought, wow, Visio is a great tool. But a whole practice emerged around user experience. And Mindgrub just continued to grow. So we added design components. So we design and develop, but then we noticed clients would have really bad branding and really bad logos. I'm like, hey, I can help you with that logo. So we added, branding and communication strategies in the beginning. We used to fire every one of our clients. I laugh about it, but we'd finish their project. We're like, hey, we did that. Everything was project managers at the time. We didn't have account managers who were supposed to actually grow the account. Project managers are supposed to get the projects done, of course. So every client, we'd work with them. And then, we never had a client return for a second year because their project was done. But we figured all that stuff out. We kind of grew from, a fulfillment company doing apps to an agency, to a consultancy now. We have support emerging tech. But then we have all these startups. And during the pandemic, we have probably 100 accounts. At least half of them was building agile software on the consulting side. And we had a number of clients that just had a capital crunch and, they didn't have the cash flow to keep building the app. We built the first version of it, got an MVP out the door, got to market, but they didn't have any money at that point for marketing. And I tell my clients, hey, if the app's going to cost 100,000, you got to have at least 100,000 to market it or you're not going anywhere. Right. And so it became clear that we had to help them with marketing. We had to help them with software development to really get their products commercialized. But then it became very obvious they needed help with fundraising and capital. And Mindgrub's now about 200 team members. We've had some very successful years, and so we're starting to have real profits. And so I took some money and started a first fund and for this year, and we've invested in a host of companies, a lot of which were our clients that got undercapitalized. But now we're starting to make other investments, and we're raising our first fund too, called the Human Acceleration Fund. And we're going to do about 10 investments next year in additional startups.
Great. Do you have a specific investment thesis for the fund, or is it just sort of what comes in over the transom?
No, we do. So I kind of enjoy calling myself a futurist, but really I'm just at the end of the day, mathematician, and I can look at the data and I can see, what industries are going to emerge and be highly successful. But I also do firmly believe, it's not for everyone, but there is this convergence of man and machine. People refer to that as singularity. And so I'm looking at the technologies where man and machine are coming together. So things like, augmented virtual reality, Internet of Things, robotics, more with mobile and, handheld computing, and, different emerging industries like, cannabis and hemp industry, cyber industry, right? So essentially we're looking at the places where man and machine are coming together. We're investing in hardware and software. A lot of it's, SaaS-based companies. And then, we're supporting their tech and their marketing. And, it's both services contribution or capital and cash capital.
Yeah, interesting. I often layer onto my when I dabble in angel investing, like, do I feel like I can add value above and beyond the money, right? And it sounds like that's also part of the way you're thinking about it. Is
100%.
Accelerate the business's success or increase the chances of their success through your intelligence and human capital.
Yeah, I'm actually less interested if it's just cash. That being the case, I've also started a bit of a development company. I love real estate, and it's a really good place to just park cash.
Right.
But as far as, software tech companies, if I can help them out, after growing and exiting several businesses over the years, that's where I think, it kind of de-risks it for everybody when Mindgrub can get involved. But, that said, we don't do the design and the marketing and the development always ourselves, but we do come in as, strategic advisors, help them, put together proposals and seek multiple vendors. And, we at Mindgrub, we have a number of partners, some of which have overseas teams, and some lower cost resources that is an advantage to startups.
Great. Well, it sounds like Mindgrub still got sort of the project-based business as well as sort of the ongoing retainer-based business. How has the pandemic changed the way you're interacting with clients in those two categories? Because the sort of workflow is a little bit different when it's very project-based versus sort of retainer-based.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we always start out with just doing simply projects, but as a company grows, right, and you have clients that like your services and your services list expands, then it makes sense for them to not contract with you project for project to project. At some point, the paperwork becomes annoying. So you just kind of figure out what your general spend is, and then you can work on a retainer basis. So with any business, that's our goal, is to, really focus on key accounts and growth accounts, grow those accounts, have enough work that we're cross-selling and they're utilizing many of our different service lines, that it's just natural to get into, a retained situation. On the agile software side, for that, when we release the first product, a lot of times it's project-based, but, we're in, Entergy, and we've worked with Wendy's and Under Armour and Yamaha and stuff. And in those cases, our teams, in years 2, years 3, it'll look a little more like staff augmentation, but for us, we call it team augmentation. But that's also kind of a retainer. They're retaining the resource as opposed to like a budget retainer for projects. Now, for us, not a lot changed as far as how we interact with clients. I mean, we continue to just do everything we did beforehand. We were really set up well for success. I mean, when we built this office, they put 2 floors above us. And at one point they core drilled and flushed a lot of water, and they encased our servers in concrete. And it shut the office down for, the better part of a week. And I said, I never want to be beholden to like having to physically have everybody in an office. So a long time ago, we decided that we were going to, have flexible work schedules, let people work from home. We embraced Zoom early on, and one of the best stocks I bought, by the way, pre-pandemic. But we embraced that culture. And as soon as the pandemic, COVID hit, I was actually traveling in Germany, and it scared the tar out of me because they closed the border down while I was there. And so raced home, and I said, that's it, shut the office down. We're going to be a work from anywhere company from here on out, because we just didn't need the physical office. And so for us, we went virtual really fast. We'd always had that kind of infrastructure in place, and our clients were used to it. So we honestly did not miss a beat and had some of our best years these past 2 years. It actually made us more efficient.
That's great to hear. One byproduct of the pandemic that we've noticed at Did It is that, some of our prospects and clients, more prospects actually, that sort of hadn't touched their marketing plans in years, and we just happened to be talking to them, in the middle of the pandemic, is that became the catalyst for them completely revisiting their marketing plan, because it became more obvious that the marketing plan was wrong, because their target market completely changed, where they hang out. B2B is, of course, completely different, but even B2C, consumers are interacting with media differently and consuming different forms of media. And sort of, marketing plans, both paid and earned, that were probably wrong 3 years before the pandemic, they just happened to come to us mid-pandemic or post-pandemic, where we're not quite even at post-pandemic yet, to say, hey, we think our media plan needs a refresh. And of course it did. Did you find that clients were sort of reevaluating the way they were going to interact with their customers? Obviously, in an app ecosystem, right, the way people interact with apps has changed as a result of the pandemic as well, but also just, in other marketing channels. Did you feel like it was a wake-up call for some of your clients?
It was. I mean, we've always, pride ourselves as being an innovation agency and always kind of doing the more cutting edge things. So for us, we've always been highly focused on digital marketing automation. We're a HubSpot partner, Salesforce partner. And so we've always looked at, what are the key performance indicators? How do we set up a plan so that we're assessing the results every month, and then, fine tuning it, looking at our channels, which ones are working, which ones aren't, and readjusting. So we've always been very dynamic, and we've always been using, more kind of cutting edge and modern tools. Now, we have picked up a lot of new clients that might have had an old plan that was still, maybe very traditional, right? And then so we picked up new clients because we've used a lot of these new tools, but we also did employ some new things too. So we've started to do more influencer marketing. And there's some scary statistics out there, but like the greatest generation would watch, Walter Cronkite, and everybody got 100% of their news from the television, and news was 100% truthful, or at least, high 90s truthful. Right. Whereas then you get to like, us, Gen X here, we started to read our news online, but we still stuck with, official news stations. Right. I wanted to say reputable, but not to say that influencers aren't reputable, but they don't have the necessity to do all the fact checking that news agencies do. Well, then you get to the millennials, and then you get into Gen Z, and now not only do they not get their news from, papers are gone, online news stations are gone, but they've really skewed, in a majority of their news they get from influencers through social media. So they're getting their news from TikTok. They're getting their news from Instagram, right? And so we've started to shift in that direction, where we're starting to leverage, influencer marketing. And then we're doing way more content marketing than we've done before. So, it really came down to it. Good content is, has been and is always king. But we've been doing a lot more content marketing, influencer marketing, good SEO. Right. So we've been spending more time on SEO, and then always the marketing automation that we've done in the past.
Yeah, well, absolutely. We started in SEO in '96, right? And then evolved from there through many pivots and layers, additional layers added on. So yeah, it certainly, I think all forms of earned media, and I would include influencer marketing as a form of earned media, but it also bridges into paid. right?
Well,
Because
it's
you often
definitely,
end
yeah,
up.
it's definitely paid. I mean, some of these
um,
platforms like,
but
Tiny Sponsor now, you can figure
but
out your
but
demographic you want to hit and, have 100 influencers all, touting your product.
yeah, I mean, the other thing, obviously, that influencer marketing and earned media in general solve is certain audiences run 100% of the time with an ad blocker on, right? So you're not going to be able to reach them
Yeah.
through any traditional form of digital paid media either, right? Because the ad blocker is going to have them sitting in
Well,
their
and
content
newsletters,
center.
that's actually, that was a big change during the pandemic is newsletters. A lot of organizations that had a heavy reliance on newsletters to get their content across found themselves ending up in, either the promotions tab or the spam folder, whereas they used to go
Sure.
to the inbox. But because everybody went virtual and marketing really shifted to newsletters, then the providers started to crack down and, and move some of those newsletters into promotions and stuff. So that traffic has, died down. We're not spending nearly as much time crafting and formatting newsletters as we once did.
Right, absolutely. So, are there any other upcoming platforms? It seems like there's an evolution for platforms where they start off shiny objects, right, and then they reach critical mass, and then all of a sudden they become a must-have for a
Yeah.
marketing plan. At least, if not a must-have, at least a must-evaluate. So, are there any things that are sort of near that tipping point for you where you're super excited to start including them in marketing plans?
Our venture group has looked at an opportunity with a company called Tiny Sponsor, and there's a couple of those out there now where, it's a single place where you can basically do paid influencer campaigns where you have an interface, you can pick your demographic, upload the content that you want to have distributed, and then the influencers will reach out and you pay them money, and then they'll tout your product in their social channels. So as I mentioned before, we're starting to evaluate some new platforms around influencer marketing, as well as some in the social space. We've we tried a demo with a company local here called Social Toaster, which uses your own employees to really promote your brand and share out your social content. So with some success, there we have a number of engineers and even our designers and stuff that just want to heads down and do their craft, but but as much as we can, have them market our brand, it's really helpful. We did start our own marketplace. Like e-commerce is really hot. So from a marketing perspective, that's a new channel for us, is that we started a Mindgrub marketplace. Everybody loves our brand. And we started, creating a lot of t-shirts and track suits and hats and all sorts of things. Since our workforce is very distributed now, now we just give them Mind Bucks and they can go to the marketplace and download their own clothes. But a lot of our clients and stuff will also download our clothes. So that's been a new channel for us.
That's cool. Yeah, I think one of the missed opportunities for some of the companies that are at risk of becoming dinosaurs is empowering their employees to become advocates of the brand, right? Because they come from a
Absolutely.
command and control mentality, which is the idea like, but what if they use the F-bomb? Like, that would just create a PR nightmare. So they don't really empower employees to leverage that employee's social network and to be authentic. And I think that there's a lot of rethinking that needs to happen with some of these, large employer, older retailer brands and older brands to really start to empower their employees to be brand advocates.
Well, they're going to have to. I mean, the world's changed, right? It used to be, what can you do for your employer? And now it's for the employer, what can you do for your employees? Because they really need to feel passionate about your culture, about your brand, right? And if you're doing things right, then they are great ambassadors for you, right? But for those companies that don't invest in their employees, they're also not going to get them to be good brand ambassadors, and they're going to really struggle in the modern economy.
Absolutely. Are there any client success stories that you're allowed to talk about by name or anonymized that you're particularly proud of?
Sure. Yeah, actually, it's kind of I think some of our success stories is where clients engage all of our primary business groups. So we might build their software, perform their marketing, do their ongoing support, dabble in emerging technologies, and might even get into commercializing software for them. But locally here on the East Coast, we have a big, it's kind of like a quick service restaurant, but fast casual and gas station called Royal Farms.
Sure.
They're pretty big. And we started out redesigning their mobile application. They had their point of sale, in a lot of cases, their point of sale system might have a framework for a mobile application, but it's not the best user experience, right? Because it's the same framework that they might need for all their customers. And so we made like, Wendy's mobile app in the past and now Royal Farms. But we first focused on the user experience of that mobile application and just made a phenomenal, award-winning application. But then from there, we integrated with their point of sale system. We redesigned their kiosk. We helped with their website, all the way to doing a new logo redesign. And then we work on a campaign with them called the Chicken Palooza campaign. And we do the artwork for that, a lot of the graphics, design their t-shirts and stuff. So it's just really, kind of rewarding to see that our agency team is working on this client and doing some really, really rich, branding and graphics work and advertising campaigns. And then our consulting team is working with them to do really sophisticated point of sale integration, rewards programs, and mobile applications. And to have built a system that allows all of these team members to, play together, right? We have some homegrown systems for resource planning and, making sure we have high utilization and really figuring out of our team members, what projects do they want to work on and how can we then get them into the right business group or onto the right account or working on the right thing. So, the fact that we're able to play in all these, kind of different markets and industries and have a lot of success with it, that's the rewarding part of it. But yeah, client wise, it's those clients that use our multiple service lines, which is just really exciting. Because then that means that our like cross-selling is working.
Exactly. You're also active with, I guess it's the Maryland Tech Council, and you're its chairman. So I'd love to, and I noticed that they used to do a lot of in-person events, and they've gone hybrid. So
it was entirely all in person, yeah, and it wasn't just like in-person events. These were like, big. Hundreds of people, some of them, I think, 1,000 events, big ballrooms, like huge, in-person production. And I'm obviously an online guy and, wanted to start doing some online stuff. I'm like, why don't we try our first webinar? Right. But then when COVID hit and we couldn't do anything online, the team just did an amazing job. So we went 100% virtual for the last year and a half. And picked up different, webinar frameworks and tried a bunch of things and saw what worked well and what didn't. And they got extremely good at online events. And we had one of our best years ever because just like, a lot of other businesses that grew and we grew pretty substantially and added staff, our overhead costs were down and our reach was up. Right. But now this year, and, the COVID's not quite over, obviously, but a lot of people have gone back to physical events. And so one of our largest events, which is always hundreds of people, we did again in person last week. We do a big life sciences conference and we did it both physically and the online component. And with each of the speakers, they had the cameras and they were all mic'd and it was online. The online component had a physical, exhibits area. And each of those exhibitors have a number of touch points. The in-person had a physical exhibitors area. The one thing that we probably could have done differently is the online piece we gave away for free. And we had the 200 people, we snuck in a few through the door, but otherwise we were at max capacity with 200 in person. They were paid, tickets to get in, and that's what made us meet our budget. The issue was to support the online and the physical event, our cost kind of doubled because this isn't just Zoom. Like we're using, whole interactive spaces. So our costs went up, But the thing is, instead of just the 200 in person, we had over 10,000 people online.
Wow.
So our reach just exploded online. Now they all got in for free, right? But when I looked at our costs for the extra online software, I'm like, well, if they each just paid $7, right, it would have covered the entire use of that online software. So, we're still trying to figure out how do we have two different price points if you're in person versus just being digital. But the reach is so much bigger, and if you can kind of manage that double cost, I think things are going to be hybrid for the foreseeable future.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that story. I think a lot of organizations, both associations, clubs, different groups, as well as corporations, are struggling with, what does hybrid look like, and what kind of benefit you get from the extra reach versus the sort of, loss of in-person networking, and how do you recreate that in an online environment. So thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah.
I also noticed you guys do a bunch of pro bono work, which is really fantastic. I'm curious as to your decision-making process. Like, is that a committee? Is it ad hoc? How do you guys decide? Because obviously, anytime you do pro bono, you're taking hours that could be otherwise deployed, right? And so, how do you decide how to take something on pro bono?
Well, a lot of it stems from me, obviously owning the company. I'm like, we're just going to do this.
Right.
A good example is, during the pandemic, at the Maryland Technology Council, we were in our tech board meeting saying, like, what can we do to help? People are really suffering and struggling and everything. And what we were hearing from our member companies is that they were having a hard time navigating the PPP funding and other grants and loans that are available. They just didn't know where to start. Maybe they didn't have the right banking relationship. So we decided that a wizard to step-by-step, get information from the small business and then be able to direct them to the place they might be able to get funding would just be really valuable. So, I offered Mindgrub. I said, I'll give you an agile team to go build this thing out. And then we had, lawyers who contributed. We had economic, authorities that contributed. And the economic authority, it was county authority. Howard County got us all the content, all the data, where all the grants are. Their job was to keep all that data up to date. The lawyers put together all the, terms and conditions and the legalese, and then Mindgrub built the software. And we helped over 20,000 businesses in the state of Maryland navigate the PPP, and that just feels good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that said, over the years, I've done a lot, tens of thousands of dollars hundreds of thousands in pro bono work, but tens of thousands in actual cash outlays, because we also donate to a lot of organizations, and mostly it's around STEM. I was a high school teacher, as I mentioned, and I'm a big believer in STEM and STEAM, right? So we, invest in code in the schools, and, over the years, Digital Harbor Foundations, a few other organizations there. But when I do my annual planning every year, I notice that it's, a lot of cash outlay and a lot of pro bono work. And our team members want to be involved in that. I think particularly, millennials and Gen X really focus on community and community building more, and, equality and, diversity and inclusivity, of course. So we put together a committee, it's called our Charitable Giving Committee. There's a chair there. We put a budget together every year, and they have this budget to spend on charitable giving, and they know kind of our investment criteria is really around STEM and STEAM. And then to the point that we're also going to start a foundation before January, because we do some charity golf tournaments. We have some other, charitable activities where we do fundraising now. And we used to have to do it with a sponsoring organization, but we'll have our own foundation to take in those funding and be able to redeploy it where it's needed.
Cool. That's a great story, and it sort of touches on the importance of your team enjoying that pro bono aspect of working with you, and it ties into my next question, which is really, everyone in the tech space, whether it's tech marketing, tech dev, there's an HR shortage, right? So have you found a silver bullet for that, as far as finding the best people? I continue to iterate on our processes, to try to continue to find those diamonds in the rough, as well as find people at mid to senior level that are great as well. So I'm curious if you've got any thoughts to share there.
Yeah, it actually, our brand's gotten pretty sticky, and locally we always, had a easier time hiring than I think a lot of our competitors. And we're now, in Baltimore City for businesses headquartered here, we're the largest. And so we became kind of a magnet locally, but with, kind of the, hiring crisis, or shortage that's been going on, we were just before COVID starting to, get a little flustered and trying to find people as we now have, big projects at these, large enterprise organizations where we're, staffing, 12 to 15 people, right? There's always going to be turnover. And so, when that turnover happens, you got like 2 weeks, right? And you're trying to find that replacement. So we already started to get frustrating, but we were only hiring in the greater Baltimore, DC area. So as soon as COVID hit and I said, you can work anywhere, then all of a sudden we were able to hire anywhere. And so it actually made hiring a lot easier because the pool of applicants, got, 1,000 times bigger for us.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen when everyone wants to go back to a physical place again, because now our team members are everywhere. But we are going to put more offices where we have like a saturation of employees or clients, and hopefully, once we do the, updated heat map to see where everybody is, I'm hopeful that we'll start trying to at least stick to some common geographies, because if, it is really hard to have a hybrid business where you have some physical in office and some entirely 100% remote workers, because the remote workers always feel a little bit left out and the physical workers always leave them out a little bit, So
yeah,
I remember in the beginning, we were so poor at Zoom. We had like 2 remote employees pre-COVID, and we'd be 15 minutes in the meeting and somebody would look down on their email. They're like, we forgot Bob again. We forgot to dial him in. We
Right.
certainly we had Zoom, but we never even like added the cameras at all, right? We just totally ghosted anybody that was remote. Now we're all in the office. We're all in our individual offices or out in the open area, and we don't physically meet. Even though we're physically in the same office, we're all still on Zoom. And the funniest thing is when everybody, like in that first minute, when everyone goes on Zoom, we always get a chuckle because we look around and see how many people are in the office. And
Right.
some meetings, like when I have my leadership meetings, there'll be at least half of us, like 6 of us in the office, and I didn't even see any of them, didn't know it. So
Yeah. I had that happen where, because it was close enough, you get the weird echo right in the background. You have to be careful not to have volumes too high or have some mix of people on headphones. Otherwise, you get these weird dynamics.
Yeah, there is actually you're absolutely right. There's some good technology called OWL now that we have at the Maryland Tech Council. And you can just sit it right in the middle of your conference room or in the conference table. And then it's got 360-degree cameras, and it knows to turn the camera on for the person speaking. So unlike most of the conference rooms ahead of time, you'd have, the TV and your cameras, and they had cameras that would turn toward the speaker, but it was still, you could tell they're in a conference room and I'm at home and there was some, disassociation. But the OWL sitting right in the middle of the room, you can have a physical meeting and you're all, sitting around a big table together. But since it turns on the cameras individually to the home user, it still almost looks like you're on individual Zooms. So I think we're going to get some of those around here as more people come back to the office, so that we, kind of de-emphasize the physical office culture part of it and continue to maintain this, online. But hybrid is going to be, it's a little tricky, but we're figuring it out.
So final question is back to marketing again. I sometimes find that even fairly large organizations sort of sometimes miss a 101 level marketing challenge, or get something wrong that really should sort of be a fundamental marketing basic or something like that. Do you find that there's sort of a consistent theme of things, that folks miss that you
they miss focusing on the results? I mean, believe it or not, like we start with the results. What is, we do as a company, we do a lot of OKRs, objectives and key results, but we look at the results. What are we trying to achieve? Right. And then what are the objectives that we need to meet to get those results? And then to meet those objectives, what does, in the case of marketing, what does this campaign actually look like? Right. So we start with results and then build the campaign. I think there's still, a lot of misnomer around like, oh, well, we just have a great brand. And if we just like I'll tell you, I can't tell you how many clients thinks the Apple store is really like the end all channel. You just got to build an app, put it in the store, and you're going to get millions of downloads, right? Like they literally think that. But the way the Apple store works is that you have to, within a certain period of time, it's like 2 or 3 days, you have to get something like 30 or 40,000 downloads to then actually show up, right, on like top 10 apps of the week or whatever. You have to get 20 to 30 or 30 or 40,000 downloads to show up there. And then, that's some marketing for you, right? Top 10 apps, you'll get, some additional downloads because they show up there. But if you stick your app in the store, nobody knows it's there. Unless they literally know the name of the app and they're gunning straight for that name, they're not going to find it in the store, right? So then you need to have splash pages, SEO, like create websites and stuff. But I can't tell you still how many clients think that they can just stick the app in the store and they're done and they're going to get millions of downloads and be a millionaire and blah, blah, blah. So, the fact that you need to do marketing, I still is a misstep in some cases. But then when you do marketing, just have focus on the results. What are you trying to achieve? And then every month looking at the data and figuring out how to adjust. I still see too many new clients when they come to us that somebody set up a campaign, the campaign's been running for 6-8 months. And we're like, well, what are the results? And they know how many, like if it's a conversion campaign and they're trying to get contact forms, they know how many people filled out the contact form, but that's it. That's all they've got. I'm like, well, what were the other aspects of it? How many people hit the splash pages? How many, clicked on some paid media or some paid search, right? And, are you using marketing automation? Are you using cookies, right? Like, a local paper, I was in Germany last week and I go to their website, wanted to see what happens. And they said, sorry, we don't work in Europe. That's because they never tackled GDPR, right? They never tackled some of the privacy issues around cooking people that was necessary. But, as long as you, properly address GDPR and you still are, providing those tracking pixels, then ultimately, what that, prospect is doing across your entire ecosystem. You can essentially track all of their movements on every channel, lead score them, and then based on where they are in a decision-making process, and you put them in that smart list, you can then market to them effectively to move them along to the next smart list to eventually to get to that, conversion, whatever it is that you're trying to get, right? And so just to focus on the mathematics of it all, right? The mechanics of it all, the results of it. I started out as an engineer. So for me getting into marketing, I'm a very much an analytical person and I can do logos and all that sort of stuff too. But, it's being very analytical about it to get the results you want. And then also always being disruptive too. So if your campaign can have an element of disruption, plus be very methodical, and always looking at the results, you can get some great results and outcomes.
Absolutely agree. As a matter of fact, it's because I'm geeky and have built a bunch of tech that I sort of discovered agile development. And then I ended up overlaying that on top of my account and media teams because I sort of felt like marketing needed to be more agile than it was. We were always very results focused, but this, the sort of constant improvement thing, agile deals with really well. Right. So it's almost like you can use some development frameworks.
Well, in agile marketing, it's a thing for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, great. So much fun chatting with you about, technology from a development and marketing perspective. And I look forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, sounds good, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.